Okay, here we go. Nice and quiet.
Sound speeds, camera rolling.
Holding for sound. Last looks. Calling for last looks.
And set and action.
I need to swap batteries.
You know, making movies is hard.
Making movies is hard.
Welcome to Making Movies is Hard, the podcast about the struggle of being an independent filmmaker. I'm Alrik and
I am Liz Manishow.
This week we have writer-director Felicia Pride on the show, who's writer of such shows as Queen Sugar and Grey's Anatomy, and director of a new short film, Tender, which we've featured on the show as our first ever Get Shorty.
And also realizing that the work is everything and that the process of creating the work is everything, right? Because that's the only thing they can't take away from us is the creating. They'll try to take your credits. They'll try to take your money. They'll even try to take the product sometimes, right? But they can't take the process of the creation.
Felicia talks to us about how she got started in the writer's room, what it takes to write an episode of television, and how she stays focused on her goals in order to push her career forward, which was really amazing information, I think.
She's just one of those people where you're like, where did you come from? You speak like she's an inspirational speaker when she says like 2 words. She's pretty astounding.
But before we get to our talk with Felicia,
my breath catches in my chest until I hear 3 little words. You got mail.
Hey, Alrik.
Hey, Liz.
We've got mail.
Oh, sweet. What's this week?
Okay, this is pretty exciting. I know you found this, but then I started looking up this guy, and he's very impressive. So Richard J. Bosner gave us a review on iTunes with the subject heading informative/inspiring, 5 stars, October 1st, 2020. All right, Richard says, it's been exciting to see this podcast grow, morph, and establish itself as a wellspring of empowerment for independent filmmakers at every level. What I hope people will take away from the show is the ability to recognize their own film community, no matter the geographic location. Always remember that independent films are built on relationships, not money. Tell your stories, make your voices heard, and don't wait for Hollywood to deem you a filmmaker. You are a filmmaker. Congrats to Alrik and Liz for championing independent films, their creators, and shedding a light on our love-hate relationship with filmmaking. Is Richard Bosner like a secret third co-host to the show? Because
No.
He's eloquent and he should talk all the time. Thank you, Richard J. Bosner.
Yeah, so Rick Bosner is, been on the show before. That's kind of like he was on way back, probably like in episode 70 or something.
I'm gonna have to listen to it. I haven't heard it.
Yeah, he's amazing. So he's like a local film producer, but he also works in LA. So he splits his time between Los Angeles and San Francisco. And he's really well known in the Bay Area. And I think I knew of him before he was on the show, and then we got him on, and it was great. But yeah, he's just an amazing guy. Like he met with me way early on when I was working on the alternate, like kind of before I had raised any money, and he gave me a lot of like amazing advice on like what to do and what not to do and how I should move forward, and I was obviously trying to hook him as a producer, but I mean, it was sort of clear that that's like not kind of what he does. And he was working on much bigger budget things like, 5 million, 2 million, whatever.
Feature 2, Alrik, feature 2.
Yeah. But it was really, really valuable. And then I met him again at AFM when I was there. Like he was there, working on one of his projects, selling it or something. And we talked a little bit, and it was just great catching up. And it was cool, like, cause that was like 2 years probably later after I had met with him the first time. And, he just told me how dead AFM was, and then how like, he was unsure how much like movement I was going to have as a director being at AFM, but like he said, it was good for you to see it, but anyways, Rick, thank you so much for the amazing review and for sticking with the show all these years and listening. I mean, geez, the fact that you still listen is pretty amazing. I mean, that was like 3 years ago. So, but yeah, also we should shout out our latest Patreon supporter, Jonathan Filipko.
Thank you, John.
You guys might remember John from asking a few questions, a few months ago on the show. He went and made the step, which is amazing.
We nabbed him. If you would like to be nabbed by Or if you would like to send us a question, comment, or suggestion, head over to Patreon, look us up at makingmoviesishard.com. Send us an email to podcast@makingmoviesishard.com. All of these are actions you can take if you want to support the show. Leave a review on any of the places you can leave reviews for podcasts. Here are a lot of things that you could do, spoken very fast and maybe in a poorly grammatically structured sentence. Lastly, make sure you jump over to our Instagram, pick us on our Instagram page. In addition to being able to follow us and see our lovely faces, you can check the link in the bio and you'll be transported to our brand new YouTube page. Please subscribe and you can see our video content. We're not just interviewing people over audio, we're interviewing people over video as well. It's fun to see our faces. It's fun to see their faces. We make weird faces. Other people make weird faces. Let's just do it. Thanks for doing that.
So guess what though? It's time for Get Shorty, Liz.
I'm actually really excited about this one.
So you make movies, huh?
I produce feature motion pictures.
I got an idea for a movie.
So this week we have filmmaker Parrish Stikeleather, which is one of the most amazing names I've ever said in my life, with his film Long Drive to Yadkin, which is a very interesting title. And it's also a very interesting movie. But before we talk about our thoughts on it, here's Parrish to talk about the film.
Hey everyone, over at Making Movies is Hard podcast. The reason I chose to make a short film versus another medium, partly is just terms of resources and practicality. I would love to have made a feature, but wasn't in a place to do that, both financially and creatively. I feel like I needed to get a few more shorts under my belt. And so this was really just a way to practice some things and sort of get some ideas off my chest I'd been wanting to experiment with. And then when I came up with the idea, it just felt like a nice little short film. So it kind of, just seemed right, really. And as far as the story in particular, I just remember I came up with the idea of, or just had the thought of, what if a barber was giving a guy a haircut and he died in the middle of the haircut, and that mixed with a couple other ideas, like the title came to me, just that title in general. And then so I thought about Yadkin and I liked the sound of that. So it was really kind of all these things mixing together were just interesting to me. And I didn't really think too much about it. I just kind of wrote it and sent it to some friends, and they all said good things, and it felt like the right next thing to make. Yeah, in terms of coming up with the funds, it's one of those things where I wanted to get a couple shorts under my belt before utilizing the sort of crowdfunding technique. And so I had made one short back in 2016, self-financed. My wife and I we had some money in the savings, and so we just used that. And then same thing with this one. We shot this in 2018 and just tried to, that was another part of making the film too, was thinking, how can I make this for the least amount of money possible? So it was calling in a lot of favors. I knew that we would only shoot for one day, so that everybody worked for free, and so that I could not keep them for more than a day. And one location was important. And really the most expensive thing was the rights to the licensing for the music licensing. So that's really where the bulk of the money went to. But again, it just was, my wife and I had saved some money, and we just, decided to use it on this. Hoping that maybe the next one I'll try crowdfunding. I felt like I thought about crowdfunding this, but it seemed like, it would have been good to go into a crowdfunding campaign with a couple things under my belt to say, here's what I've done for whatever the next thing is. And I don't even know if the next thing will be crowdfunding, but it just seemed when I finished this script, it seemed small enough and doable that, we could use a little bit of our savings to make it happen. Yeah, in terms of when I made the short, what I was thinking, I mean, obviously, I think with a lot of filmmakers, when they make a short film or make anything, you kind of part of your brain pictures, or at least for me, I'm thinking, you know, I don't know if anything's going to happen with it, and then the other half of me is thinking, oh, it'll get into all these festivals, and obviously the festival route is the hope in a lot of ways. But I had always planned, and this is what I did on the previous short, I've always planned on just releasing the film online. And not waiting on festivals. A lot of festivals don't really mind it, it seems. I know some say that you can't put it online before a premiere or anything like that, but I've always been a fan of just putting work out. So as soon as I'm done with something, I'll sit on it for a little bit in terms of thinking of a good release date, but other than that, I just want to get it out there so people can see it. And then if it gets into festivals, great. So I was certainly hoping that it would get into some festivals. It got into a couple, but not really, certainly no major ones, which is fine. But really I was hoping it would just be something that I could be proud of, because I had made, I was very proud with the short I made beforehand, but it was a very small crew, and it was, you know, everybody wearing a lot of hats, which is as it is on any independent film project. But with this one, I wanted to have a little bit of a bigger crew, which is still an incredibly small crew. But I wanted it to be, for me to be able to really focus on directing and not have to worry about camera and other things. And I got to stretch that muscle on this short film. So really that was another goal. It wasn't even so much, what could this do for my career? It was more, what could this do for me personally and creatively in terms of the craft of filmmaking. If it does anything for my career, that would be amazing, you know. And it did, you know, it serves also as a calling card, which is nice. I think that's really what, something that's very valuable with short films is they do act as a sort of calling card for when you I've sent the film to a couple of actors, and they've said really good things about it and are interested in possibly working on something down the road. So that's always nice. It's just something that you can show, like, hey, this is what I have to offer as a filmmaker. And if people like that, they can hop on board. And if not, that's fine. I've had a composer reach out. So it's basically just served as a really great tool for meeting other artists and filmmakers and hoping to collaborate with them someday. I think that's a huge advantage of just getting your work out there, because all of that happened online. None of that was via film festivals. And of course, things can happen via film festivals as well. But that's certainly, yeah, now that it is out there in the world, I think just... yeah, hopefully people coming across it and enjoying it and seeing something of value in it. You know, it's a little 12-minute short film, but, you know, I've had a couple people email me after seeing it and say really nice things, and that's always really great and makes it worth it. So I might have rambled, but those are the answers to my questions, and thank you guys again so much for showing this short film and talking about it. I really, really appreciate it.
So Liz, what did you think of Long Drive to Yadkin?
I thought it was the best short we've done on the show.
Wow.
I really do. I think it was the best short we've done. It reminded me, I mean, I'm a big Cohen Brothers fan. It felt like very Cohen Brothers-y.
Oh yeah.
So like for me, I'm
Big
like,
time.
oh, I am your audience, Parrish. The color palette was just like so purposeful, so lovely, so interesting to look at, because it was like so specific and pink and green and teal, and I love the writing. I thought the casting was amazing, because not only were these real people who were great performers, but like also the main characters, well, who knows who the main character is, it's debatable, but the man who walks into the barbershop, his eyes match the decor. Like everything seems specific and perfect and choreographed, and I loved the pace. So for me, this is like the exact type of film I want to watch, and like I want to see the feature, and I loved it. All right.
Wow.
You look like you have a different opinion.
That's interesting. No, I didn't expect you to have such a glowing review of this one.
I thought it was great.
I liked it as well. I really liked the opening. All the close-ups in the barbershop I thought were really, really cool. I loved the way they brought us into the story. I thought that was super well done. I love the visuals overall, not just in the opening. I thought the way that they shot the film was really good. And, part of it was that barbershop is extremely interesting, and they picked an amazing location. And then, of course, the performances were good. But what I didn't love was that there was no drive to Yadkin. I mean, come on. If you're going to call a movie Long Drive to Yakin, give me a drive to Yakin. I mean, come on.
It's a metaphor, Alrik. You don't need an actual car to drive to Yadkin.
Know. I'm always getting accused of being too literal and everything. But, I just, and Yakin is Yakin. I mean, I get it. It's fun. It's very Cohen Brothers-y, but yeah, I don't know. I liked it. I get all that stuff. And I get that we can kind of pull together the story of this guy from, what he says and from what the woman says on the phone. And I get that, but I just wanted a little bit more of.
You like more plot. I like less plot. You like more plot. I've identified this difference between us.
Right.
I love zero plot. I like when one thing happens.
I think the other thing about it that I liked was that in the beginning, it's this visual storytelling that's sort of driving it. And then it gets into all this dialogue and talk. Right. And I think what I wanted was a visual ending to go with the visual opening. Right. So you can sort of be shown the ending and rather than told it, through, through a drive to Yakin, for instance, or not a drive to Yakin, or leaving the barbershop and going someplace else and showing us something else about this person rather than just dying in the chair, So that's sort of what I was hoping the ending was going to be. But
that's the feature I mean, whatever. We don't know Parrish. We don't know what he's thinking.
Sure.
But I think the feature version is the barbershop owner driving the body back to Yadkin and fulfilling this goal, right? And come on, how good would that be? It was so good.
So I think it would have been what I would love to see is if the ending of the movie was this guy taking the body, putting it in a car, and then driving off.
Yeah.
Then Alrik would have been like, whoa.
You'd be like, my enthusiasm. Yeah.
I'm not saying that I don't like this short. Obviously, I think that was really well done and super interesting and just, but I'm just saying that's where, my eyeballs wanted to see that. But anyways, Parrish, fantastic job. Thank you for sharing the film with us. If you guys have thoughts on Long Drive to Yakin, share them with us. I'm just glad that we're doing this segment still. It's super cool. And please, we're running out of shorts. I almost have no more shorts in our bucket of short films. So please send us some shorts for the bucket because, I'm going to have to start digging them up myself, or Liz and I will. We have, but we're going to have to continue to do that. And
we should talk about your short one week. We should, or one of your many shorts. I mean, that's what we're going to do. It's maybe that's why people aren't submitting shorts, because they want us to talk about yours.
They want us to talk about our shorts. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Not mine, yours.
Well, you have shorts too, don't you?
I like maybe one or two.
Maybe you have shorts. You just don't want to talk about them. I hear you. I can read that. I can read that. All right. Well, I think, without further delay, I think it's about time that we get to our talk with Felicia, Pride.
Amazing. So Felicia, thank you for being with us today. This is super exciting. Let's kick it off with our first question about writing for Queen Sugar. So how many days does it take you to write an episode of television?
It depends on rooms, but I know for the most part, we'd have about 7 days.
And then do you get to know the average budget of an episode ever, or are you just writing a script?
It does depend on the room. And then also it depends on your rank as you move up in a room, as you become more of a producer, you definitely deal more with budgets and that sort of thing. But you do have to, I think that was one of my biggest learning lessons from my first episode of TV is that they're actually going to make it. So we're so used to writing specs, so you can kind of go wild. You could have car crashes and, all these things. But that was one of the first things my showrunner was like, oh, you want to do a lot in this episode. I had to pare it down because it is to budget and they are going to make it. So you do have to write to production to a certain extent. You don't want to necessarily stifle your creativity, but they are going to make it. So you have to make it makeable and producible.
Does the 7 days that you cited, is that inclusive of all the edits that come from the team and everything that comes from production?
No. And then you usually, typically with rooms, a lot of rooms, you write an outline first. You have a specific amount of time to write an outline, a few days. And then you would revise that outline typically, and then you'd write a draft. So that's strictly just drafting the first draft. And then you'd get feedback and you'd go into the rewriting process.
How long does that take?
It depends. It depends how fast your room works, but and it depends how fast you get feedback from your, whoever's supposed to give you feedback, showrunner, studio, production company, network. But then you're working on things simultaneously, right? So you're still breaking additional episodes while you may be waiting for notes. But typically, once you get those notes, it's a quick turnaround. You want to turn that script around as quickly as possible, a couple of days.
And then how big is the writer's room?
Queen Sugar, we had 6 writers, but all rooms vary, depending on how many episode orders they get. So a lot of network shows that do 22, 23 episodes, could have 12, 13, 16 writers. So it really depends on episode order.
What do you think is more difficult, writing one of these specs or writing a feature script, or being a part of a writer's room, and maybe specifically your experience on Queen Sugar?
I love being in a writer's room. I loved being in the Queen Sugar writer's room. I learned so much. I also didn't realize until I got into a writer's room, you really don't learn long form storytelling because you're always writing pilots independently. You never have to think about how episode 13 is going to impact episode 2 or the journey of a character from episode 1 to 13 across seasons. So I love that part of the writer's room. I love the magic that happens in the writer's room. That we always had a lot of that Queen Sugar magic when the ideas just build on top of each other. So to me, that was the easiest. I think features are the hardest. Features are a fucking beast. And I also feel like they're one form that you have to tell a complete story in a certain amount of page count. I've been trying to think about other forms. Not even poetry. Like you can go on and on. I mean, of course, they're like some 3-hour movies and 4-hour movies, but for the most part, you have that 90 to 120. You have to tell this story. And I find that really challenging. At least with TV, you still have space to go with these characters. This episode is not the end. But features, man. Oof.
I think we both have so many questions for you. I wanted to take a step back because I remember, I think it was you and I, we met at a Chipotle like 8 years ago or something. And like we're sitting there and I have my like massive bowl that should be for 2 people, but it's for 1. And I think you have like an iced tea. And you were just transitioning from working at Tug. Like that day you had decided to move on to a different career path. And since then you've just been this like shooting star. And I know you talk a little bit about empowerment. You have a newsletter. You talk a little bit about age and creativity. Could you tell us a little bit about like what led to all these changes for you? I know it's like a massive question, but I think it'll get us off on a...
No. So for a long time, I started out as writing as a journalist, and then I wrote books. And then like publishing kind of became weird, and I wasn't able to sell any more books. So publishing dried up for me, essentially. And what I did was I made the fatal mistake of I stopped writing. I needed to get a job, which I should have done. I should have got a job and continued writing, but I got a job and I stopped writing. And then that job, I was able to then open up a consultancy for about 7 years. I was running a consultancy, which, Liz, I was essentially an impact producer. And I did that for a long time. So I got to a point where I remember I had landed my biggest contract. 2 months later, lost that contract because the project shut down. And I was burnt out. I was tired of chasing checks. And I was also, even though I loved my work, I was tired of being in service of other creators and not creating myself. So I came to a crossroads where I was like, either I'm going to try this writing thing again, and this time I want to do it for film and TV, or I'm going to get a good government job. And the latter part scared me more. So I moved to LA at 35 years old, 5 years ago, and I needed to get a job. So I started very early on when I got here, I got the job at Tug. And I loved working at Tug. I loved being in service of filmmakers again. And I had one feature that I brought out here, which I eventually sold, but really nothing else. And I wasn't really writing the way that I was supposed to because I was so into my job. And then I got laid off from Tug. So it was not even a natural transition. It was like a forced transition. And that
I didn't want to
layoff,
say that because I think that there are like negative implications to that, but it wasn't. I mean, Tug, as we know, is kaput, so it had nothing to do with you. But anyway, that's
oh
why
no,
I was
that's
like,
fine. I mean, it was very devastating to me at the time, but it was what it was. It turned out to be a blessing in disguise, or it turned it into a blessing. And that's when I had to get serious about why I came out to LA. I was like, okay, because I was on the track to continue down this distribution path, and there's not many women in distribution. There's definitely not many Black women in distribution, but I was like, I need to recalibrate. And that was when we met, was kind of the start of the time when I started to recalibrate and really focus on what it is I wanted to do. And I knew I wanted to write. And so that's what also, I had this feature. What I realized though, as a writer, one of the ways that you can work steadily is in TV. So I also had to sort of start to learn the structure of TV. So I took a bunch of classes. I joined writers groups. I got a career coach actually that focuses on entertainment, Carol Kushner, so I could get just my shit together. I worked on my portfolio. So I went into a rabbit hole for several months. And it was interesting because during that time, I was basically taking these positions that would pay my bills, but were also not public. Because that's what I also realized, was that people knew me for distribution. They forgot I was a writer, because I forgot I was a writer. So of course they forgot. So I started to have to change the narrative too, that I was a writer again. So I started taking these odd jobs, including I was a coordinator. So I was an impact coordinator on a campaign. And I remember the producer, who I think both of you, I know I won't say, but she was like, you don't want to run this campaign? I was like, hell no. I just want you to tell me what to do, because I have to focus on writing. So that's what I had to kind of do for several months, was just get these odd jobs so that I could focus on writing and make writing the most important thing. And that shift, both from a practical standpoint, was also psychological. I had to rekindle my relationship with writing. I had to let go of the baggage I had with writing. I had to say, because I put all this pressure on writing that I had to financially support me, and that's not true. I have to support myself. And it's a nuance, but I needed it from my head. And that's when things started to open up and change, when I had that sort of perspective shift, and I then started putting in the work to match it.
You said you put several months of writing, and you're getting all these samples together. You've got your career coach. Was there one moment or one meeting or something that kind of got you to the next level? Or I think this is the moment that a lot of people miss, because a lot of people focus on the writing. A lot of people, get a career coach and do all these things, but not everybody gets to the next step. So what was it for you that got you to into a writer's room, or to the first step to getting to a writer's room?
Yeah, so I was laid off in October. That September, I actually was selected for the Film Independent Screenwriting Lab. And so that opportunity reminded me again also why I was out here, and also being around peers who were writing, being in just the space of craft. That was kind of the first stepping stone. But the real stepping stone was getting into Writers on the Verge. So that's one of the fellowship programs. They have a bunch of fellowship programs, all the networks do. And when I first moved out here, I applied for them. I had no idea what I was doing. Of course, I didn't get in. I skipped a year. That's when I was working at Tug and everything. So the next year I got really serious about doing it differently. So I took fellowship class. They would tell you about the bios and how to write the bios, because I didn't realize how important those were.
Wait, you took a class on how to apply for fellowships, or?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I need to hear.
And then how to write your own bio for
because the fellowship bios and essays are really important, because they at least, this is how the networks look at it. It's your opportunity to tell your story. But I also realized that through those classes, and Script Anatomy, who does the classes, that's where I take all my TV classes, they show you how a cohesive package is important. So for instance, for my package for Writers on the Verge, I spec'd Atlanta. So that was my spec. And the spec was about it was crazy too. I also took a big ass swing for my spec. Like my Atlanta spec takes place in Purgatory. Whitney Houston is in it. Tupac's in it. So I took a big ass swing,
Nice.
but it also was about like rekindling your relationship with a father. And so my bio and essay was about sort of my relationship with my father and how that impacted my writing. And then my original pilot is about a father-daughter relationship. So it was all very cohesive package that I kind of learned in the fellowship class. And of course, you know, those programs are so really hard and competitive to get into. I had no idea that was going to happen, but it did. Simultaneously, though, I was also trying to sell my feature. So I wrote this film 10 years ago. I've been trying to get it made for 10 years, came out here. Part of that reason why I came out here was to get it made. I tasked a director. So I was simultaneously also like moving forward with that in terms of trying to sell it. And we eventually sold it to Macro, and it was made and it was turned into Really Love, and it was supposed to premiere at South by. So I had some things happening and pushing. So I realized that this is a place where you have to generate heat for yourself. So Writers on the Verge is kind of what opened up a lot of things for me.
God, that's like such amazing advice. I didn't even know that there were classes for these fellowships.
It's a big deal out here. I had no idea how serious people
take
it.
Everything. And I think a lot of us just like submit drunk and we're just like, what a great idea. And then we're like, why? I didn't realize how important this
That was me the first year. It was so like submit, like, yeah.
That was me a few years ago. That's me every year. You mentioned the baggage that you had to let go of when writing, like the writer's baggage. Can you explain that a little bit more? What baggage did you carry around when you were writing?
Because I had some success as a writer, as an author. I had some success. So, I started to equate writing with my financial stability. And I also had so when writing or when publishing dried up for me, I was resentful. I was resentful for writing. I also became very scared again of being a full-time writer because I had done it. I had some success, and then it went away. So it was this baggage of both of resentment towards writing, the pressure that writing has to provide for me, and then also being scared of there is some instability that comes with being a writer, right? So being scared to go down that path again. And so I had to have that perspective shift that, no, it's not writing that is supposed to provide for me. It's me. And it just helped my head wrap around things. But yeah, that's what I had to work through.
It's like separating like the art and the creativity from the means to survive, basically.
Yes. And also realizing that the work is everything and that the process of creating the work is everything, right? Because that's the only thing they can't take away from us is the creating. They'll try to take your credits. They'll try to take your money. They'll even try to take the product sometimes, right? But they can't take the process of the creation. And so finding that joy again, and embracing that joy, and then connecting it to a bigger mission. Like my mission is so much bigger than Hollywood. Like my mission is connecting to telling stories that illuminate our humanity. And we think about the time that we're in right now, as my therapist reminded me, it's even ever more important for us to do that. So my mission is so much bigger than Hollywood. Like they can put up all these blocks and obstacles, but my mission is bigger than that. And so when I connect to that, that's what helps me to fucking deal with this nutty business, but also that urgency, that fire, and then also that joy.
This is kind of a random question, but where were you based before you moved to Los Angeles?
DC.
Okay, so you came from DC to LA.
Yeah.
And then this is also a very personal question, and I don't know if you mind answering, but how old were you when you moved to Los Angeles?
Yeah, I was 35.
Wow.
35. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. I was not young in Hollywood years, but I feel like that wisdom and that, the dealing with people for 35 years and running a business, all of those things I realized have come full circle, and I use them as assets. Like my age is an asset, especially in the writer's room, to be able to have life experiences, to be able to understand politics and how to deal with people, and all of that is an asset.
You talked a little bit about your mission, but I also know you as, I don't know. I mean, you probably have referred to yourself as a mentor. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. I don't know what baggage that is, but like you do empower others with your newsletter and like just coming on here and all the public speaking you do. Is that part of it as well? Or is that just like a byproduct? People are just inspired by you and they're like, come on. Or did you create the newsletter to build an audience for yourself? Can you talk a little bit about your outreach as an individual?
Yeah, I think it's really a part of me. My mother's an educator, and she is, most of my family are public servants. And, you know, she just has dedicated so much of her life to doing exactly that, you know, empowering others. So I have that educator bug. I taught for a long time on the college level, like adjunct, and the thought of it just makes me like, but I like the teaching aspect of things, and I like being in service of creators. So I started the Create Daily in 2012. I was still living in New York, and it was just a way I felt like and prior to that, I had a newsletter called Backlist, which was all about Black authors and Black professionals that work in publishing. And it was just me highlighting them. So it's always kind of been there. And sometimes it's difficult, right? Because you're trying to do your own thing. and sometimes we use highlighting others as an excuse not to do our own work. So I've been having to find a balance of being in service of other creators while also being a creator. I think I finally have found that balance. Finally, I still kind of struggle with it a little bit, but I just enjoy, because I think that when we support each other, it comes back to us. You know what I mean? It comes back to us. We help each other build, we help each other rise. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we all needed help to get to wherever we are, or to wherever we're going to be. So I think it's a really great attitude to have, just to lend a hand and answer a question and be open, you know, and not shut off. That's kind of what the whole podcast is about, is trying to open up the mystery behind filmmaking and everything. I had a question about this, because this is the thing, because I'm sure you have a manager and an agent now, right? As a writer.
I don't have an agent because, you know, we fired our agents. I was at CAA, so I do have a manager.
Was it like a strike or something? I guess
it's a dispute with the ATA, the Association of Talent Agents, and the WGA just had a big win that UTA has come on board. We reached an agreement.
Oh,
with
wow!
UTA. Yeah, so that was one of the big fours that came on board. So it was a big deal from last week. But I was at CAA, so my old agency still has not reached an agreement. So I don't have an agent, I have a manager.
Okay. I guess the question was, like, a lot of, you know, I'm just guessing, and maybe I'm wrong, but like when you sold your script and all that stuff, did that have anything to do with like your manager or your agents at the time? Or was that stuff like a deal that you kind of made on your own? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, we were unagented when we sold our feature. And when I say we, the director and I went into Macro, pitched it, went back another time, then sold it. And that sale helped to kind of get agents interested. Wow. Was the sale of that.
And then how did you get connected to Macro?
So that was through network. You know, I really believe in the power of the network. I feel like most of the opportunities that have come my way have come through network. So the producer that we attached to the project had a project at Macro. The director went on set at one time when Macro was shooting the project and connected with one of the execs, told her about the project, and we were brought, the exec read the script, we were brought in to pitch. But also, it was also like identify Macro, because I felt like, the great thing about distribution is I think about packaging and I think about, you know, who needs what. And at the time, it just looked like Macro could use a lower budget, not so heavy film, because they had like come off of Fences and Mudbound. And so they just seemed like a really great place to try to find our way in there.
So you went after them specifically, basically?
Yeah.
Wow.
Specifically, but also organically. They were on our list. So we had like a list of places that would make sense. And like, how can we get into these places? Who do we know type of thing.
Right. And then the producer you attached just happened to also have a project with them.
Yeah.
So it was just like good timing and everything. Yeah. Wow. It's amazing.
Yeah. Timing is everything. I mean, 10 years later, it was like, I mean, that's also why features is,
It's a long game.
It is a long game. Absolutely.
What about the Queen Sugar opportunity? Did that come out of the fellowships? Did that come out of network? Or can you talk about the pathway to getting staff?
Okay, so in between, right after Writers on the Verge, so in Writers on the Verge, I sold my feature. No, before Writers on the Verge, I sold the feature. Get into Writers on the Verge. After Writers on the Verge, I sell a pilot. And that pilot was based on the book that I've loved for years. Then I get offered a staff writing gig on a network show, but because I'd be a staff writer and it was a first season show, they were like, you have to push back your development. So I basically had to make a decision, like, did I want to move forward with my development or did I want to take this big ass check? I moved forward with my development. And so I was in Writers on the Verge as a comedy writer, okay? The show that offered me the staff writing gig was an hour long. The one thing that Karen Horn, who used to run Writers on the Verge, told me when I got out of the program, she's like, look, write an hour long. I think you can write a light drama. It'll open you up for more opportunities. So I had to turn down this opportunity. I said, you know what? I'm going to make sure I have an hour long. I'm going to write an hour long. So I write an hour long, send it to my reps. Queen Sugar was looking for writers. So it was very traditional in that my reps sent my pilot to Anthony Sparks, the showrunner. Anthony Sparks read the pilot. I get called in for a meeting, but he had no idea that my film actually stars Kofi Siriboe, who's one of the stars of Queen Sugar. He didn't knew that at the time. So he was like, you should be really proud that you got in here just off a read. And so that 1 hour pilot that I wrote in between of like, wanting to be like, I will not be denied. I need to make sure I have all my stuff. That was the pilot that got me staffed on Queen Sugar. So then after I met with Anthony, then you meet with Ava, and then I got the offer.
I want to go back a little bit. So you're talking about this job that you got offered, and then you had to choose between your development and this job. Is that your development through Writers on the Verge? Is that what that is?
No, I sold a pilot through my agency, basically. So,
okay.
Yeah, so they got me into the room. I told them I wanted to pitch on this project. They got me into the room, and then I pitched.
That's what you mean.
Sold it, yeah. And so with Queen Sugar, my development was further along that I then was able to, be able to be staffed.
And you mean the development on this pilot?
Yes.
TV show. And was that like a daily thing that you were going into a room working on, or what was that?
It's just, and that it's one thing that it kind of irritates me about the TV business, that they just don't want you working on other TV stuff while you're in the room. I get it, but it's also like development is so slow and you do it on your own time that it's like, really, but that's really what it is, especially on a first season show. The first season show does not want a staff writer working on something else, essentially. So that's what it is.
So even if like a feature or something else or
features are exempt.
Oh, okay.
So that's why when I'm in rooms, I typically am working on features, because you can write as many features as you want. You can sell as many features as you want because they are typically exempt. It's mostly TV.
Wow.
So you ran up all this momentum, and it seems like what I'm trying to think of a good analogy, but I can't. It's like sparks are flying. I don't know. But a lot of things are happening.
That year, I want to say that was 2018 or 2019. I can't remember. But I sold a pilot, sold a feature, and got staffed all in 1 year.
And then, a year and a half later, we're in the midst of the most insane time of this like crazy pandemic we're all in. Do you feel any sort of slowdown in momentum, or as a writer, are you able to kind of work through this period, or can you talk a little bit about how you're managing during the pandemic?
Yeah, I'm actually in a room. So I'm in the Grey's Anatomy room. So I'm working, which I'm really, really grateful about. And I did, though, hit a wall. So the beginning of pandemic, I was still in the Queen Sugar room. So we did like my last few weeks on Zoom. And then I had all this like energy. I was like, ooh. I released Tender online. I started creative chats with my friends on this like IG show where I would talk to my creative friends. I had a lot of momentum, but I was doing way too much and I hit a wall. And that wall also kind of coincided with like the uprisings. So, and then I get into a room. So it was like, I really struggled. Like there was a week, 2 weeks where I could not, it was trouble getting out of bed. I really, 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 really struggled. And then I was mad because my capacity had been robbed because of racism and white supremacy. So I was mad about that. And so I got back in therapy, but then had to just show myself grace and compassion. And like, so slowly, surely my capacity is coming back. You know, I sold a feature to Universal last year. And so I'm on the rewrite of that. I'm working on another project with a colleague. So slowly, surely things are coming back, but I hit a wall and then I hit an emotional wall. So that was infuriating. But yeah, slowly, surely coming back.
So how did you work through that? Was it like, you know, just with going to therapy, or like what was like, how did you get through to become creative again when you were like in that tough spot?
Yeah, I mean, therapy helped a lot because, you know, you get to, I was at a point where I was like, none of it matters, you know, what I do. And she's like, no, like what you do is really important, which is kind of what I was saying before. She reminded me of like that storytelling helps people connect to their humanity. And one of the things that she says, it sounds like you're disconnected from your humanity, and what are ways that you can get reconnected. And that's what I started to focus on. It's like, how can I be safe? But also like see people. How can I be safe and just reconnect with what brings me joy, what those sorts of things. So that's helped. Deadlines help as well. And just time. I just needed just to give myself time. So that time and that compassion and grace to give myself time helped a lot.
Just a reminder to give me the name of your career coach, your fellowship teacher, your therapist, all your friends. You're amazing. You're so teamed up and like such an inspiration, especially in the midst of all this horror. But now you're directing, right?
Yes.
You're writing and directing and producing all these things. What was the first project you ever directed? Was it Tender? Was that the first thing you ever did? And like, why now? Why Tender? And what is the future of Tender?
Yeah. So learning more about the business, I learned that features is really a director's medium, right? Like a lot of times writers are, as quickly as writers can be pushed aside, they are like kicked out the door. And that's not right for some projects. There are some projects where I'm like, after I finish writing it, like, you know, have your way with it. But there are some projects that are so personal to me that I know I have to be involved from beginning to end. And one in particular that I started writing was a story that was inspired by my mother, my sister, and my niece. And the thought of giving that to someone else to direct just seemed impossible to me. I was like, there's no way. So I started taking a bunch of directing classes. And because I was always I had told myself, I had this narrative in my head that I can't direct. I don't see like a director, all this shit that I was telling myself. So I had to like, you know, work through all those feelings and emotions, and classes helped me with that, and actually doing to see if it's something that I could possibly do helped me with that. And then also when you just see other people who are directing and you like, I could do that. You know what I mean? So I started to, I was like, let me try it, but let me try it in a really contained way. So Tender was written to be like a way to try directing in a contained way, 2 actors, 1 location, 1 day. So I wasn't doing too much out the gate. And yeah.
How did you feel after the first day or that 1 day of shooting Tender? Like, what was your feeling as a director when you walked away from that set?
I was so, I couldn't even articulate it. You know how, I mean, Liz, you know, you've done so much directing. It was like overwhelm and like joy and like, what the fuck? I can't believe it. Like, it was like all these, and I had so much adrenaline. And like, am I just supposed to go home? Like, it was just like, what do I do now? Because it was such a magical day in so many ways. And also like something that just a year ago I said I could not do. You know what I mean? So that feeling of like actually pulling it together, because we also crowdfunded for the film. I didn't have any money at the time to be shooting this film. So we crowdfunded, and the community just supported me in ways that was also overwhelming. I couldn't believe it. So it was just a lot of I couldn't believes and having to like pinch myself.
And just a reminder to anyone listening, everyone listening, so many people are listening, that we featured Tender as one of our Get Shorty segments a few weeks ago. And so it's one of the shorts that we kicked off. I think we kicked off the whole segment with Tender.
Yeah,
right?
first one.
That's awesome. I feel so honored. Thank you.
Yeah, it was the perfect like beginning of this new segment. It was so great.
Oh, that makes me so warm inside. Thank you.
And what's the future for? I mean, it's you're turning it into a feature. What does that mean, and what kind of feature do you think it's going to be? Is it what is that? I don't know.
I have no idea. But it's so funny because I have no idea what the story is. Like, so we released Tender online during the pandemic because it just felt like I think one of the big things of festivals, one of the big advantages is being able to go to festivals, and the networking and the camaraderie and the being able to see people watch your film. So we couldn't do that. So I remember waking up one day and I was like, we should release it online. And luckily I have a team who work fast and is used to like my like ideas and just like, let's do it. And the reception has been so amazing in so many ways I didn't expect that it would be received the way that it has. And what I realized too is that, you know, we know fundamentally that we need more stories with Black women. We need more stories with queer Black women, but it just really, really reconfirmed for me how much we need these stories. And so many people, so many Black women, so many Black queer women were just like, we want more. We want more. I want it more. Is this a feature? So that sort of audience desire is what made me be like, all right, I want to try to see the feature. But now I'm so fucking scared. Like, I am so scared for so many reasons. But I'm working through that fear and trying to figure out what the story is. I have no idea what it is. I mean, I have some ideas because these two characters came from a pilot. Actually, the pilot that got me my job on Queen Sugar, these two characters came from that pilot. So there is some additional story already, but I don't know. But what I do know is I want it to be probably ultra low budget. I still want it to feel fairly contained because again, I think it could make a great first feature if done in a smart way. So those are the things that I do know, but story, I don't know. Like, hopefully it'll just hit me upside the head one day and I'll be like, oh, that's what the story is.
And why did you, I mean, I think I saw that you played like one or two film festivals and before you decided to release it online. I could be totally wrong, so please correct me, but is there a reason you decided to release it online rather than waiting for more film festivals? Was it just the fact that, you know, life is short and you want to get it out there? Or was it because in the midst of this pandemic, we can't really rely upon those opportunities the festivals normally?
Yeah, well, you know, Liz, as a distribution person, my goals were twofold. Yes, I wanted it to be a calling card for everybody involved, but I also wanted as many people to see it as possible. The film festival route is not the way that as many people are going to see it as possible. There was an opportunity where as many people that we wanted were at home with not much to do. You know what I mean? So for me, it was like, okay, this is one of our bigger goals. And people are at home and actually have time to possibly watch this film. Like, let's take advantage of this opportunity. I have a lot of thoughts about film festivals, but we still are in several coming up. Like we are in Black Star, which I was so proud of. We got into Bronze Lens. We got into 3 additional festivals that I can't even announce yet. So the other thing is it's a short. A feature would be different right? But shorts, you can tend to like, there's not a lot of exclusivity they're looking for, and especially that the film festivals became online. There's not a lot of exclusivity they're looking for. So it was a gamble a little bit in like, oh, you know, we may lose out on some film festival opportunities because we're online, but so far we haven't.
What was your strategy for releasing the film online? Like, did you do any like try to get write-ups or reviews for the movie to like help launch it like on any sites, or did you just release it and like share it with friends? Like, how did you plan
we had a whole plan, let me tell you.
cool.
Our campaign strategy. So the idea too was, because I knew I was going to be going into a room, like we had a month to really go hard. That was the initial plan. I crafted a strategy that was month long, basically 30 days. And every week we had an anchor activity. So the first week, the anchor activity was the release, and we partnered with Shadow and Act for them to release the film, which was the best partner. Like the numbers that Shadow and Act pulled for us were amazing. And that press was such a perfect way to launch the film. Also brought on a publicist, because I believe in good publicists. I don't believe in bad publicists, but I believe in good publicists. And she and I had worked on a project together. So she was on board. The second week was our like screening with Q&A with cast and crew. The third week was a tender case study that I did, where we had more than 300 people sign up and 200 people showed up for that. And then the last week, I can't remember what the last week was, but we had an anchor activity for each week. And then so our publicist Jasu was simultaneously getting us press. We're still getting press, which was amazing. We just had a really big piece in The Root, which made me cry. Like it was like amazing the way that press has come to this film and are talking about this film. And we only released on Vimeo. So now I'm thinking about experimenting with windowing out YouTube. Like, is there a way that we can launch on YouTube that's interesting and different? And, but we reached our goals. So we had goals on views. We had goals in terms of like the quality of press. I was so fucking pleased with how the team, which is Regina Holes, who's our producer, Amber Brown, who's the campaign lead and is like my right hand, and Jasu Sims, and then Drea Donna Rowland, like all Black women, how we rolled this film out. It was more than I could have expected. I was so happy.
So I'm looking at your Vimeo page right now, and I see like you've 92 likes, you have all these comments, but you've decided not to share your views publicly. Can you talk about that decision a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that was early on. I mean, I can tell you we're at like 23,500 views.
Awesome.
Wow.
So
Nice,
I actually think I will, but that was early on because I didn't know how many views we would have. So I was like, let me, but thank you for reminding me, because I do think we can share those, because I'm very, very happy. I'm very, very happy. And they just keep going up, which makes me happy as well. And also, like worldwide, like to be able to see people from around the world watching the film is amazing. But our goal was 20,000 views in the month, and we hit that.
Oh man, congratulations. That's such an amazing thing to pull off, because like, you know, yeah, most short films, you know, you'll get to a couple thousand and then it's it's really hard to break even 10,000, you know. Just, I don't know, a little background. So I've released a bunch of short films online, and my first one was a fluke. It got a bunch. It was like 25 in a week or something. And then I never hit that number again. Like I basically,
it's hard.
And I tried so much harder the other times. Like I did like tons of articles, like tons of reviews, like all these different partnerships and everything. And like, yeah, you know, it's really, really challenging. So congratulations to you to pulling it off. And it's really cool to hear about a little bit about your campaign strategy, because I think that's really smart to have like, you know, all this activity you're doing and then have like a milestone at the end of each week. That sounds awesome.
Thank you. But it's hard. It's hard. Liz knows, like, and I don't take any view for granted. Like anybody that said they watched the film on Twitter or Instagram, I thank them for watching the film, because you cannot take any. It's a big deal to get someone's attention. That's a privilege.
I know we're winding down, but I have another vague question that you somehow turn into a productive answer, Felicia. But you mentioned how scared you were about Tender, and it struck me a little bit because you're so astounding. can you talk a little bit about fear, whether it is about Tender or about other things? Like, are you afraid of anything else? Like, is there anything else?
I'm afraid of a lot of shit. Like, writing my first studio film was very scary. Got through that. I think that fear, part of it lets us know that we're alive, right? Because that's the brain doing its thing, trying to protect us. That's also what I recognize too, is that the brain is trying to protect us. The brain thinks it's a wild animal, but it's not. It's just like getting on stage and talking a lot. But the brain is just trying to protect us. So I also have compassion for what the brain is trying to do. It's just trying to protect me. But I then have to let the brain know that like this is not life threatening. But then there's also part of it. It's like sometimes you have to like qualify the fear and be like, well, what is this really? Like, what am I really scared of, right? Because then I feel like that's the way that I can address it. Like with the directing thing, it's like, what am I really scared of? It's like, oh, I'm scared that I won't know what I'm doing. So in order to do that, it's like, let me take classes and then just having to take that leap, right? So for Tender, it is partly like, it's a feature, like, like what? So part of that too is like, okay, how can I prepare myself? So I've already started to like, I always have like my own film school, but started to enroll back into a film school that's focused on developing features. A lot of the work, Liz, that you did on like Jim Cummings and the short to feature, like has been so helpful on thinking about that and planning for it. I also want to slow burn it. So I'm trying to think about the team. That's also why I want to do ultra low budget, because I want to have creative control, because I want to be able to start working with the team sooner than later, right? I want to be able to be working with the cinematographer and be very clear on things. I don't want to have to rush it. So yeah, there's those fears, but then like getting to like the root of the fear so that I can address it.
So what's the process on the feature right now? Are you just writing or are you trying to sell it? Like what's the status?
Yeah, my manager is kind of shopping. We're interested in partners, but I think I came to the point where I'm like, I want to own it. So I want to do ultra low budget. I'm actually thinking about launching a Patreon for the development process that would help to pay for working with a cinematographer, before pre-prep, like things like that. And also bringing people into the back of the process, continuing to build audience. So we're also continuing to build audience for the feature as we are developing the feature, as I'm figuring out what the script is. And then, yes, it'll be the actual script development. And then again, trying to find partners. And also I'm looking for like a mentor producer. I have some really friends who are amazing, who are producers, who I'm thinking about like going to ask for that. So that's kind of where we are right now.
When you say partner, you probably mean like a production company, right? Like somebody that you can partner with to like, raise the budget and, take the movie from start to finish, basically.
Well, yeah, I definitely want an experienced producer on board. But I mean more partners, like producers, yes. I don't want a bunch of cooks in the kitchen, though. Right. My ideal financing situation would be myself and someone else. So that's what I'm kind of, and then partners to just bring it to life. And that could look all types of ways. It could be organization like a CineReach or something like that. So that's where I'm at. And when I say myself, I mean like crowdfunding, Patreon.
Raising the money.
Because we're thinking about merchandising, some Tender t-shirts. Like we have a lot of ideas about, and also an experiment. Like what does long-term fundraising look like? Can we fundraise for essentially a year before we shoot?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, you probably have to. Well, that's what my experience was. Like I fundraised for like 3 years to get my feature made.
Wow.
And it was really, it's like you get a little bit at the beginning and then it's super, super slow. You get a couple partners on, like a producer or whatever, then you raise a little bit more. And then for me, it was like, nothing after I got that little more. And then at the end, we just decided to make the movie. Then it all came right at the end.
That faith you have to have, like, let's just move forward and somehow the money.
We're going to do it. Crowdfunding. I crowdfunded. That was part of the plan at the end. And, it was like crowdfunding and then like trying to find investors at the same time. That was like the little magic thing that unlocked the fundraising, was doing those things at the same time. But it was, I definitely will do it differently because I crowdfunded and I shot a month later. Never do that. It was insane.
Wow. Wow.
I have one last question. Do you have a question, Liz? Are you good?
I'm good.
Okay. So the last, it's kind of a technical question, but you talked about going from the Queen Sugar writer's room to the Grey's Anatomy writer's room. How does that happen? Is that just like you get approached with an offer? Like, do you seek out to go into that writer's room? Is it like once you're like in a writer's room and you do well, you get other offers? Like, talk to us about how that worked a little bit.
Yeah, it varies. So I think there are a couple of scenarios. One, your reps are sending you out for stuff. Basically, they're sending your material to shows that are looking for writers. So my rep was definitely doing that just to see what was out there. And then she'll hear about stuff. So she'll be like, oh, so-and-so is staffing. Are you interested? And I'd be like, no, or yes. This opportunity actually came from a friend from who I known from working as an impact producer, and was like, hey, Grey's is staffing. Do you have a sample? And I was like, I thought it was a long shot. I thought it was an absolute long shot. But I'm like, this is a show that, this could be something. Like it's in the zeitgeist, it is a cultural phenomenon. Also, I was interested in trying network because I've been on a show that like basic cable. So I was like, okay, I'll go for it. But I don't attach the outcomes. So I put in the work, like prepping for the meeting. My sister, my niece, we were like putting up characters and like, prepping for, so I did the work, but I just didn't attach to the outcome. And if it's for me, it's for me. And it happened to be for me this time. So, but yeah, that's typically a way, or or you hear about it from friends, you hear about shows staffing from friends, writer friends. That's why it's always good that if you want to be a TV writer to know a lot of writers, because writers hire writers recommend writers. So yeah.
I just want you to teach us how to not attach ourselves to outcomes.
Well, I look at it as two ways, because the disappointment is too much to deal with, like over and over again. So it's either that there's something bigger and better on the way, or I'm dodging a bullet. Those are the things that I think about when I get a no. I don't look at it as rejection necessarily. And then also this business, a lot of people just have no vision. So like, I'm just like, oh, they're lost. Like, too bad. When they come back, it's going to be too expensive. That's kind of how I look at it. But the dodging the bullet, or there's something bigger, because that just means it's not for you. So, and because also we want something that we don't even know what I mean? Like the assumption that this is going to be great for us, that's a huge assumption. So we want something that could actually be horrible for us. Like, that's why I just try to let that go, because I don't know what this experience is going to be. I just want the experiences that are for me.
But the thing that's so wonderful about you is that you put in the hard work for it, and you don't attach a bunch of like baggage onto the outcome, like you said, which I think is huge, because it'd be easy to be like, oh, I don't care about the outcome, I'm just gonna submit and see how it goes. But you're just like, no, like I'm gonna treat it like I care about the outcome, and put in all that hard work and put in the time, and then if it works out, it works out. And I think that's wonderful.
Because I look at it as part of my craft, right? Like, I just keep getting better. So all of it is craft work for me. That's also why the focus is on the process, not the outcome, because the process helps me to get better. It helps me to create work. And also I look at it as like, I get in front of more people are more exposed to my excellence. You know what I mean? So
I think that's just like a great lesson in general, because it's like, if you don't enjoy the process, why are you even doing this?
Why do? But also I remember what it was to not be creating, and I don't want that shit ever again. I don't want it ever again.
Well, you're a hero. Let's move on to the final 5 questions before I keep on just like throwing praise on you and just making everyone uncomfortable. So we already talked about this, but this is one of our final 5 questions. What's the first film you've ever made, and how do you feel about it? So maybe just tell us a little bit more about how you feel about Tender.
I mean, I made a film before that where I was a writer producer. I didn't direct it. It was called The End Again, and it was also an experience that helped me open back up to my creativity. So I feel nostalgic about it in that way.
And what's the best filmmaking advice you've ever received?
I don't know the best, but one that sticks with me is that the director's job is to bring out the best performance in everyone, and beyond cast, department heads, everyone on set. And I love that as a definition of a director.
I'm like almost afraid of this question. Do you have a goal as a storyteller?
I have a mission, and that is to definitely tell these stories that are burning inside of me that are typically about Black women, Black Gen X women. So that's very, very, very important. It is, it's what guides me. It's what drives me. So yeah, and then I have lots of goals, multiple shows on the air. One of the people who I love what their empire looks like is Reese Witherspoon. I love that as an empire. It's substitute directing for acting. So yeah.
If you could go back in time, what's one piece of advice you would give yourself?
Don't stop writing. Do not stop writing. That was the biggest mistake I made. And it took so much out of me to get back to writing again. Like it was like a war within myself. So that's what I would have told my younger self. Don't stop writing. Get the job. Don't stop writing.
And our last question we always ask is making movies hard?
Yes. It's so fucking hard. It's so hard. It's so hard. But maybe that's what makes the process that much sweeter maybe, but it's so hard. But we need more. You know what I mean? Like we just have to accept that it's hard, but we need more and more and more. Yeah.
Yay! Where can
Amazing.
people find you?
Yes, you can watch Tender Movie at tendermovie.com. We have a bunch of bonus stuff on there, playlists, and behind the scenes videos. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Felicia Pride, and you can find Tender Movie on Instagram at Tender Movie.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening, for joining us. Thanks to Felicia Pride for making this episode happen. Check out our website, makingmoviesishard.com, where you can find links to the things we talked about on this episode. If you want to get in contact with us, send an email to podcast@makingmoviesishard.com. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at MMIH Podcast. I am Liz Manischel on Twitter and Liz Manischel Film on Instagram. Alrik, where can you be found?
I am Alrik B on Twitter and Instagram.
Please, if you like the show, tell a friend, help us get the word out, leave a review on iTunes or Stitcher, sponsor us. We're looking for sponsors now. So hey, come on board, get the word out about your company to a lot of amazing filmmakers who listen. And we will talk to y'all next week.
All right, outro time.
Yup. All right. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to